How do you do? Thank you for your presence. Today, I'm very grateful to be joined by esteemed astrologer Steve Judd, a man of the craft for over 45 years. Thank you so much for your time and expertise, sir. How are you?
Esteemed.
Yes, a man
I've
of.
been called many things, but never esteemed.
Well, it's like someone who's got a certifiable backing to it, that word's esteemed, right?
Yes, I've been certified many times. No, yes, I am. I have the MA in Cultural Astronomy and Astrology, but that didn't make me a better. Well, correction. It didn't teach me anything I didn't already know. It taught me how to use what I already know in a far more effective and efficient way. So yes, it made me a much better astrologer.
I appreciate that. That's sound advice for those who are on the path or learning the craft or already know their craft. Is that a disciplined way to approach it gives you a greater structure and template to move forward with?
Yes, for those people that want to learn the astrology, I send them to the faculty
Uh-huh.
because they are the best teachers. The Faculty of Astrological Studies are probably the best teachers of astrology in the world. If they are, but they are somewhat dry and methodical. When I teach my students astrology, I imbue them with a sense of passion and magic and laughter. And yes, I'm not as thorough as the faculty by a long way, but then the faculty teach them all the fine tuning, all the fine details that I don't have the time to teach because I am a practicing astrologer. I'm not a student. I'm a practitioner. So when students come up to me and say, "Oh, but what about perfections? And what about the midpoints or the Arabic point or the Arabic stars or the Arabic points?" I go, I haven't got time. You study them. You're a student. I haven't got time. I'm a practitioner. I know them and I use them, but don't ask me to explain them. Life's too short. You
Yeah.
know, I'll deal with the transits and the progressions and the natal chart and the various things that go along with that. But the fine tuning, no, no, I haven't got time.
So I would say I've got some interesting questions coming up, and that would be that for practicing astrologers, obviously it's a bit like water. If you pour water on a mountain, it can run down so many different ways. And there's so many different paths to explore with astrology. And so it feels like we have to choose ones which either really strongly intrigue and interest us, or that naturally resonate with our capacity of intelligence, like what our natural fortitudes are, so that we can really become an expert in that particular field or that particular part of the craft. How did you choose to perfections and transits? Was that what you were saying that you were
Progression,
specializing? Progressions
progression.
and transits.
Um, I didn't so much choose them as it became obvious. When I did make a choice is when I decided from an early, very early age, within a year of studying astrology, I made it clear to myself that I wasn't going to get involved in Eastern or Oriental astrology. That I was going to stick to European, Western derived astrology as what came from Babylonian and then um, Greek, Egyptian, Roman to the present day. Become a Westerner. I don't deal with Eastern concepts such as fate, destiny, karma. I have my own translation of them born from a Western perspective, which is more free will orientated than rather than the fatalistic way. Um, and the reason that I chose to involve myself primarily with forecasting techniques of progressions and transits is because I realized that they work.
Hmm.
And the other techniques, they work, but to me, for me, secondary progressions and transits are the core of my forecasting business. And I deliberately use the word forecasting instead of prediction. Anyone who predicts the future is a fool. Whereas forecasting is like the weather forecast. Sometimes you get it wrong.
So, because this is, again, like we said, that this is a broad subject, I would like to see if we could just focus on these three channels of exploration. Um, let's leave the transits to last because I'd like to explore those with you, and you're clearly an expert on them. And so maybe we can also explore progressions in just a moment. But firstly, what about this free will? I think I'll give you what my antithesis of it, what I feel it is, and then I'll see if you resonate, and then like to hear your own, if that's okay. I feel that will is like the sun, right? It's our heart, it's our amplitude for really shifting things because we've got a burning heart's desire, or in a sense of passion, to get up and do things with that kind of energy. Um, so we can curb our enthusiasm by maximizing our moments, in a sense, or we could choose to rest on our laurels and we might potentially miss the bus or miss the boat, if you will. And so I feel that that's like a muscle that we can practice, but with consistency, it becomes a lifestyle. You can make a lifestyle of having a strong will or intention. And so I feel that we also have a tendency to get stuck in our groove or stuck in a habitual pattern as souls. And so with astrology transits, when we see a retrograde, I feel that maybe we, as a planet enters shadow, we start to play out potentially old blind spots. And those parts, when we become more conscious of them through the retrograde, once a planet becomes retrograde, we know those blind spots because they've been replayed so many times, and that's our opportunity to alter them and maybe become more clear and cognizant and conscious of them so they don't reoccur in a haphazard manner for us moving forward. That's my determination of how I feel that we work with free will in astrology. I would love to hear your take on this because I think that you've got so much experience working with clients and transits that obviously you're a man of great expertise.
There is an old rule of thumb that, yeah, it's not hard and fast. But as you know, when you find a chart with all the planets or most of the planets in the bottom half, you know you're dealing with someone who's got introverted tendencies. Same as with someone in the top half, they're more extroverted tendencies. There's also a school of thought that says that when you're dealing with someone who's got the majority of planets on the right hand side, then they're more in tune with words like fate, destiny, and predetermination, whereas left hand side people are more in tune with words like free will, choice, and self determination. Now, I was born with everything on the left hand side. So I do tune into those words big time, but I question what comes first, the chicken or the egg, the chart or the individual. And having worked extensively over 30 or 40 years with these ideas of free will versus fate, and looking especially at the Indian translation of this with the North and the South node, I've come to realize just recently, literally in the last 6 months, there's a difference between fate and destiny. In that I don't believe in fate. I'm a free will person. How can I? But destiny, I have a destiny. I know my mission statement. I know why I volunteered to come here. I know what my purpose is. I know what I'm going to do. How I do it is up to me. It's going to happen, and I either do it willingly, under my own volition, in any way that I see fit, or I do it kicking and screaming, but I'm going to do it. And it's much easier if you do it willingly because then life's easier. So the idea of anything being written in stone and fated to me is just like, no, I rebel against that. As soon as someone says, this is your fate, this is what you will do, I'll go, right, you watch me. And I'll do exactly the opposite just to upset their ideas of what is right and what is wrong. And I'm not being, well, I am being rebellious, but fate is just, what is the point of fate? What is the point of coming here if you know exactly what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, when it's going to be done, and what the result will be? You might as well be a robot.
Uh-huh.
So to me, it's not about the sun sign. If there's such a thing involving fate or destiny or free will or choice in the horoscope, it is to do with the shape of the chart and also the nodal positions.
That's so very interesting. So it's the personal outlook in a sense with the chart energy. Like my chart is all at the bottom. So half on the left, half on the right, but all at the bottom, except for
Mm.
um, Lilith and Chiron and the North Node on the top. But everything else is on the bottom. And so it's interesting that 'cause when we think about we're boxed in or we feel that we're not having an option, that's a consciousness which we adopt, like we could feel victim to circumstance. But then when you empower yourself to think, this might be the situation, but I can do this and I can do that, and that might be even give me leverage to do this, then you're empowering yourself with your will.
Yes, I agree with that. Yes, and you're kind of stepping into the unknown, and I like that.
Yeah, that's like it puts you in the driver's seat and you're leading, and that's a great position to be in rather than
Rather than being in the driver's seat, Philip, I'd rather see it as someone who steps off a cliff blindfold, trusting that solid ground will form underneath your feet with every step you take.
well, isn't that what life really tries to encourage us to be like
I
in
think
general?
so.
That's brilliant, isn't it? Because that's like the Fool, isn't it? We see the Fool card. That's the energy of the lead protagonist, the storyteller, the naive one who's got confidence enough to explore themselves and the world.
I love that analogy. I
Brilliant.
like simple because I consider myself incredibly simple. Not simple as in stupid, but simple as in not complicated. Now, I've just turned 70. So as I get older, I want more and more simple. And to me, simple means questions that I can answer yes, no,
You're a
because that's,
Cancerian, right? So happy solar return.
yes, I've just turned 70. I'm a Cancer with Virgo rising and Sagittarius moon.
Aha, very
I
cool.
love my Sag moon.
Oh, we all love a Sagittarius, everything or anything. I feel like it's one of my favorite signs. I've got a Sagittarius, Saturn, Mercury, and Uranus, so I'm a fan. So we were talking about the potential, the secondary progressions, and
Yes,
this is something I really have a great interest in. I'll tell you a little bit about my personal secondary progressions and why I find it so interesting and why I've been using it with clients in a way which brings out great psychotherapy for them, great opportunity to see their story and witness it in the present from the when they look back at the past and be like, oh, I didn't have the capacity to see what I was moving through back then. But now, as a witness to what I've already done, I can have love for that past me, this present me, and open up new potentials for the future me. And so the way that I do it was firstly studying my own, and that was that I was born about 6 days before a new moon. And so when I was 6 years old, I had a progressed new moon in my chart. And at that time, my parents that brought me up, they parted ways. And so but a seed was sown then for the next 28 years because that was a new moon. And that lasted all the way until 2021 when I entered the current lunar cycle I'm in. And so and that was a so I was born into a Sagittarius cycle. The new moon I had when I was 6 was a Capricorn one, and now I'm in an Aquarius lunar cycle. But when you break down the crux, the opening first quarter, the full moon, and the closing third quarter, there's such poignant moments in life for me. And if anybody does that, they are always such poignant moments in life. And so that's what I love about the progressed lunar cycle. It really shows almost like a tree and the seasons of a tree and what we learn and what we grow through, and what we're letting go of and what we're creating space for. And I feel like even if you're living obviously I'm a I'm a middle of the age kind of guy. I'm 39 this year. And so when you've lived two full Saturn cycles or two full progressed lunar cycles when it's returned to phase, you kind of get to know your arc. You get to know your pattern so well. And that's the way I like to use the secondary progressions. And obviously, I know that other people would say that that's a different way to work. Other people use it. I've seen that other people use it by overlaying it over the natal chart, which is also very greatly interesting. But I like to use it as a counseling tool that opens up trust and confidence in the growth of our hearts.
Fascinating.
Thank you for listening.
You've given me a lot of food for thought there, because that's completely different to the way I use it. But it's certainly opened my eyes up, and I shall look at that. See, the only progression to progression I use is the progressed new moon, or the progressed full moon, because I know it works. But yeah, I'm the opposite to you in that I only use progress, with the exception of the progressed full moon and new moon. I only use the progressed sun in terms of its conjunction or sometimes opposition to planets in the natal chart. If you look at the birth chart, then the planets behind the sun, well, the sun's never going to conjunct or oppose them by progression. It's only the planets ahead of the sun. I have a Mars Uranus conjunction 15 degrees ahead of the sun. And when I was 15, I left home. When the progressed sun passed on top of my Pluto, which was 45 degrees ahead of my sun, that's when I started doing astrology full time as a living. And now I'm approaching sun conjunct, my progressed sun is approaching my ascendant. It'll be there in 2 to 3 years' time. And so to me, I used to think that this would be the time of my physical death. Now I'm realizing that it's actually the peak of my professional life.
Yes,
Uh,
I think that's
but
cool.
the progressed sun only moves 1 degree a year, whereas the progressed moon moves 1 degree a month.
Hmm.
And that's a far more accurate tool for timing, particularly in things like rectification. Um, the progressed moon, along with transits of Mars, I find are the best two tools for rectification. Once you know you've got an approximate birth time, you can use the progressed moon and the transits of Mars to make it more accurate.
That's a great.
Um, but rectification is a whole different ballgame. It's a fascinating subject. There's
Yeah.
so many different techniques, but I've been able to find out birth times from people who have no idea what time of day they were born. Where you get problems is when people come up to you and go, "Yeah, I don't know what day I was born," and you think, "Okay, mate, I can't help you." You have to draw the line somewhere.
I actually get a lot of Ubers here, and there's a lot of people who moved to Ottawa, which is a capital city of Canada, and they're from various foreign lands, like myself. And a lot of people don't know their birthday that I've spoken to, and that's a flabbergasting. They'll tell you the month, but they don't know the birthday. But yes, going back to the progressed moon. Um, it does fly by, and it's very interesting. I've got my progressed moon in Aries now. The sun is in Aquarius. I've got no personal planets in my natal chart, or no planets in my natal chart in Aquarius. It's my fifth house, though, of creativity, and I become a dad, and I'm becoming a dad again for the second time in September, which is really cool. But what is really interesting before we move off of progressions potentially is that actually a very slow moving planet is going to change sign for me in September, the same month as becoming a father of a baby girl. And that is my Mars will leave 29 degrees of Aries, making ingress into Taurus. And it will probably be in Taurus for the rest of my life, knowing how slow Mars will move. And so that's pretty cool.
Now, you see, I kind of disagree. Well, I don't disagree with you. I tend not to use any other planet in secondary progressions apart from a sun and moon, except stations.
Uh-huh, yes, they're also very big
When a
flags.
planet stations either retrograde or direct, that is significant. But when someone says, "Oh, my progressed Pluto is coming up to sextile my ascendant," I'm thinking your progressed Pluto moves 1 degree in the whole of your life. You know, get real. Um, Even a progressed Mercury, even when Mercury's at its fastest, will move no more than 65, 70 degrees in the space of a lifetime. Progressed Mars in the space of a lifetime, even at its fastest, will move 1.5 signs. You know, Jupiter will move 10, 12 degrees over the course of a life. So I think to use the outer planets in progressions, at least from Jupiter out, is just silly.
Ah,
Uh, Mercury, Venus, Mars, yeah, there's a case for it, but again, I don't have time to do that. That's why I stick with the sun and moon because I know that works for me. But then I consider myself a laser when it comes to astrology. I haven't got time to focus on all the little significant points. I just cut through to the core and then I backtrack and deal with all the stuff that's coming off the core. Most other astrologers will go in and they'll take it apart bit by bit and gradually get closer and closer to the core. Whereas I'll go straight to the core and then backtrack from that, filling in as I come back. Because most people are aware of their foibles and petty interests, but most people don't want to look at their core stuff. So if I go in there like a laser and go, right, so you were abandoned at 3 years old. Oh, by the way, here's a box of tissues, you know, and that it's a bit sledgehammer like, but it's also laser like, and it opens them up, and straight away you can deal with core stuff rather than as I'm fond of saying to my regular clients, they know me well enough by now to know that I'm not gentle, sensitive, kind, and diplomatic. I'm not there to hold their hand. I'm there to tell them the hard truth, whether they like it or not, and give them the best tools to actually manage their life. What they do with that is up to them. You know, you can't tell people what to do, but you can give them timings and advice. And if they choose to take it, their life normally improves.
mm.
But it has to be their choice. Otherwise, they'll come back to you and go, "You said I want my money back." And so,
Time to
yeah.
cash your chips into the universe, I say. So it's actually been bringing us to this timing. You mentioned the timing and grumbling with our timing or accepting and loving our timing. I imagine you'll be loving your timing this year with Jupiter in your sign, it being Jupiter's favorite sign as well. But as we say, it doesn't always, it can, Jupiter being the great benefic, sometimes it can bring too much. And so it's a good time to slow down and to simplify, which seems to
Mate,
be.
it's in my sign, it's approaching my sun. I only have to have one black coffee a day, and that's it. I'm putting on 2 extra pounds.
Well,
Yeah.
it's good that you'll be busy as well, so you can stay active. I've seen you did a retreat in the UK a couple of weeks ago, and that was filmed, and that looked really a lot of fun.
A couple of months ago, shifts happen. Yeah, that was amazing. That was one of the best things I've ever done in my life. I'm so proud of that. People came from 19 different countries.
Wow, that's cool. It looked like a great
Yeah.
success. I'm really pleased that it went well for you guys.
Yeah, we're doing it again next year, and we're calling it Shifts Happen 2, TOO.
Wow. Well, maybe I can come along by that point, visit along, come see you guys. That'd be fun. So, these are maximizing our transits and knowing our timing of our transits is very interesting. Uh, for me, it was actually something that I've got into early as one of my main interests, learning transits. I was one of the first books I bought, learning the timing of how long the cycles were, the geometry. I actually got given a book for Father's Day, which is a great astrology book you'll know, Quadrivium, with the geometry, the four different sections. And so I'm going to read that, which is obviously just another bit of the structure and form of the great art. But these transits that we're living in now are uncanny because we're in such a shift, the likes of which we haven't seen in our experience in recorded history. Firstly,
Yes.
I recently made a video talking about the five perfections that we're going to have between Uranus, which recently made ingress into Gemini for the first time in almost 84 years. It's an 84-year cycle, so it would have been about 70 odd years, 75 years, something like this. But it's trine Pluto, and Pluto it made a conjunction with in Virgo in 1966. And
Hmm.
so all of the themes that were going on in the mid 60s were, in a sense, are being amplified and opened up in a way that we can't quite fathom at this stage, but we're about to witness and experience and participate in. How do you feel about these crazy transits that we're moving through with such a thing?
1966 saw the very first pocket calculator.
Wow. And that changed
Now,
the world.
now we're looking at holographic streaming.
And the
Uh,
things that you could use a calculator for, other than doing maths, like it really changed the world, right?
it did totally. Um, it is unprecedented. It has never happened before. When there have been such large, monumentous astronomical and astrological configurations, such as what's happening now in the past, and there have been a couple of times in the last 10,000 years where this has happened, they've all been at times in the middle of a sign, never a changing sign. So to me, this is absolutely unique, unprecedented. And the more I've looked at this, the more I've realized that viewed collectively as a species, we are at the end of our apprenticeship. This is it now. We are emerging, we are evolving at an accelerated rate into a consciousness leap, which will either lead to utopia or dystopia, a breakthrough or a breakdown. And it's like we're being examined as a species, we're being examined not by any regulatory authority, but by ourselves. We're being examined as to our fitness to survive the transition into a future that's going to be vastly different to anything we've ever experienced before. Are we fit as a species to evolve? At the moment, it doesn't look good, but I remain optimistic.
It's good to be optimistic. But I feel that I have a visual analogy for this transit and how I feel that it's got many different sections to it, that which I have not been able to dissect. But this was the analogy. Maybe in a space station, or something like that, you go through an airlock and you go into the door and you close the door behind you, and that door in front of you is closed, but you can't open it until that one's behind you has been closed, and then you can move through. I feel that these perfections between Uranus and Pluto are these various different doors, and you can't look and know what's beyond the first door until you've been through into the second, third,
Exactly. I totally concur.
because they're so
Yeah.
shifty. There's such big dynamics of innovation that can be taking place.
But I would add to that. What if, okay, the back door's closing now, it's closed, but the front door hasn't opened yet. So you're in that space of unknowing, not knowing, at which point you introduce Mr. Schrodinger and Mr. Heisinger. Okay, the uncertainty principle and Schrodinger's cat. Is the cat behind the door alive or is it dead? Is what's behind that door particle or is it wave? And that's the mystery. We don't know for certain what lies behind that door once we get into the space station. We don't know if it's going to be bug-eyed aliens or nirvana.
Well, again,
So
I think this is a good time to reflect on what you mentioned earlier, like back to the astrological chart. And as I mentioned, I'm all at the bottom, and you said you're all on the left. And so Schrodinger's cat is all about what we predetermine in our consciousness. And yet, maybe that will depend on the type of chart someone has. And the second question I have of that implication to you that I pose is that those two, left and right, as some, would you consider they could also work as the hemispheres of the brain?
very much so. And there is a school of thought that suggests that um, left brain is obviously more rational, logical, analytical. Right brain is more imaginal and creative and magical. Um, there is a school of thought that suggests that 12,500 years ago, pre-flood, we were much more right-brained. But as a result of the flood, the collective trauma, planetary wide, pushed us into being left-brained. And now we're at that 12,500 year cycle point again. And rather than going back to being right-brained, I would suggest we're at a point of both global and lobal sharing. We're about to sort of unify the lobes and start collective thinking. And whilst we're on that subject of the lobes, what I find particularly fascinating is that only 40 to 50,000 years ago, which is what, 40, only not 40,000 generations, that's all, it's a blink in the eye. 40,000 years ago, humanity as we knew it then was 4 foot tall, a very large head with a single lobe brain. It was Neanderthal. Yet within 10,000 years, 44, 10,000 years, 4,000, 3,000 generations, we changed into a 5'6" high hominid with twin brains, with twin lobes. Now, that type of mutation doesn't happen in that short space of time in nature. It just doesn't. And humanity represents such a, to quote McKenna, human history represents such a radical break to the systems of biological organization that preceded it, that it must be the response to some type of dwell point or attractor that lies ahead in the temporal dimensions. We're being magnetized forward as a species into some type of evolutionary leap. And that is what the planetary lineups of this time are telling us, that this time is now. We either make this jump now in the next few years or we don't.
That's a lot of information. It's so very interesting. So they it is said in like in a parable sense that spiritually that when we was you were saying that we were one side of the brain dominant, maybe the right side, and we fell in a sense the highest soul of our consciousness chose to embark upon the great flood and fall from consciousness so we could retrieve the left hand side and unify them like what we've just done and this however long time period it may have taken as a species. And so now, with a more unifying consciousness, we can utilize the physical and the spiritual in cognizant union with each other, the left and the right hemisphere and so for the brain, potentially. Uh,
Uh, yes, I totally agree with you.
so very interesting. It's like the spirit is fully inanimate, in animation of the matter, rather than the matter dragging it down the into the depths of physicality. It's like we've got control over the matter in a sense, more so.
Um, I think it's more a question of, I think it's more a case of putting the matter into context. In the past, we were always caught up with money and sex and power and greed. And these are still the forces that run the world today, the real world today. But increasingly, these are being seen as just material concerns, as opposed to spiritual evolution, which is on a rapidly accelerating graph curve. And less people are being caught up by the what I call the dominator culture placebos of money, sex, porn, power, greed, televisions, cars, and people are freeing themselves up from the old conditioning by developing their own relationship with the divine.
Yes, it's so very true because all of us could run towards those things that we might want to consume on a treadmill. And that's great. We might want to go for some of those things. And yet it's exhausting sometimes and can be draining. And the more important things are spiritual contentment, happiness, calm, peace. And so they actually are priorities over all of those other things. And so to bring that into the consciousness as we've done it means that we're able to work more clearly and not have those things dominate us because we've got greater morals or standards.
Yeah, I almost agree with you. But when you talk about calm and peace and harmony, I'm like, yeah, I've got a Mars Uranus conjunction. No, that's boring. I'm not doing that. Okay. I want a bit more action. I want a bit more get up and go and
Well,
drive. I want to,
adventure. Like you want to do the adventure rather than be held back by, um, you know, laziness or eating too much so that we didn't get the.
I don't want to get complacent. I come from the punk generation, no more heroes. So I just want to make, don't tell me what you're going to do. Tell me when you've done it. Actions speak louder than words.
Mhm.
So I was, I was 15 when the hippies ended. I was 14 when Hendrix died and the Beatles split up. But by the time punk happened, I was 20. So all the punks were going, "You're too old." I'm like, "No, I'm not." So, um,
So how old were you in 66, if you don't mind me asking, when this conjunction of Uranus and Pluto took place? You would have been about
I was
10,
11.
right?
I was 11.
11, 11. So
In 66,
that,
I
that
was 11. Yeah.
that aspect in general, this energy, that's like the hippie movement, and the punks was in the 70s. But I feel that this is a very revolutionary punk rock kind of energy, Uranus and Pluto. It's against the grain. It's showing things that haven't been shown to the light of day or to the collective, templates which are radical and innovative that bring something that some of us might be aware of, but the whole haven't adopted as a tradition which can be beneficial, which is something that we're open to
You're
receive.
right. But the difference between now and then was that then the punks and people like them quickly fell foul of the law and became the enemy. And now there is no enemy. There is no scapegoat for the failings of the dominator culture of the priests and the politicians and the bankers. So, and the public opinion is rapidly turning against the power brokers, which is why I feel that collectively we're heading into a time where, nation states are about to crumble. I can truly see a time where in 10, 20, 30 years' time, we'll be talking about tribes of people with similar moon signs, right? Rather than nation states.
I think that you're so on the money, and you say a couple of decades. This is where the question is. We're at this point, as I said, with these multiple airlocks, and we can't see further than the end of our nose with regards to these situations. This first airlock, we talk about this first perfection of the Uranus-Pluto trine, which doesn't happen until next year. But they're in orb now, and they're both retrograde. Uranus actually goes back into Taurus one more time before it makes a second Gemini ingress. But this is happening with another aspect, much more close to home, if you will, with Saturn and Neptune. Neptune being another transpersonal planet beyond the range of our naked eye. But Saturn is something we can see. And
Hmm.
they're on their balsamic waning phase. In fact, they're less than half a degree apart right now, both just stationed retrograde within the past 10
Saturn's
days.
just about to go retrograde. Yeah.
Yeah, so this at this point, I mean, Saturn's going back to 25 degrees Pisces, I think Neptune about 28, and they'll meet on my mum's birthday, 20th of February, uh, and back in Aries, where they are now, there or thereabouts. And so between now and then, I think is just well, it's just after that that the first perfection, I think in June or something, between of the trine in Gemini from Uranus back to Aquarius, where Pluto is, will take place. So I feel that we have to move through that conjunction, which is like almost at the end of so many illusions of trusting these heads of state or power figures that you were mentioning just a minute ago. Which ones are valid? It's not so much them, it's the traditions that have been propped up by them. Nobody is an enemy. It's just the the ongoing rigmarole of something that might not serve us as much as an innovative, revolutionary new way of doing things could be.
So it's what I call the dinosaur culture. Um, might I take this point to suggest another way of looking at this? I also, when I'm looking at the world, I don't just look at the chart of the day. I don't just look at the fact, okay, all these outer planets are about to change sign. I sometimes put up a heliocentric chart, not a geocentric, because with a heliocentric, there are no retrogrades, right? Because the sun's in the middle. So the planets don't move backwards. And heliocentric shows just the true position of the planets as opposed to viewed from the Earth. They're viewed from the sun. And there you can see that in the heliocentric, Saturn and Neptune are still in Pisces. Uranus is still in Taurus. Pluto, yeah, it's moved into Aquarius. But it's all about to happen and impact. And that's why the acceleration is still accelerating into the Northern Hemisphere spring of next year, when it's all going to crunch. That's the crunch point. And it's so exciting and so scary at the same time. It's trepidation and anticipation. This is what I've been waiting all my life for. And what a time to be an astrologer. I was saying about how there's no enemies anymore. We need to be careful here that we as astrologers are not suddenly made the enemy
Hmm.
by priests.
What reasons would you say that that might be the case? Is it because that we are speaking truth, and that's so empowering?
Yes, but also because we are encouraging all of our clients and friends and people who listen to us to have their own relationship with the spirit and with the divine, as opposed to using priests as mediators between us and God or Allah or Buddha or whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
So we're disempowering the church. But you know, their day is done.
Yes.
Their day is done. The sensible ones of the church will now start getting into spirituality and the divine feminine.
So would you say I would this is so Neptune and Saturn is very church, religion, traditions, that kind of thing. And so with a new conjunction, this is a 36, 37 year cycle. But
Hmm.
but it's not just, oh, this is another 36, 37 year cycle. This is happening at the close of a door and the opening of a new door. And it's happening at
Yeah.
a very interesting place in the zodiac, so close to
Yeah.
the very first few degrees. And so we're going to see, I would imagine that there could be a couple of new themes. I read, and the religion could be represented with a new lick of paint for those who are willing to go down that road. And it could also be that spirituality could also be done with a commercial lick of paint too, if it's not already being done that way.
A
But there
lick of
could also,
paint.
huh?
A lick of paint.
Well, I mean, like to glamorize it and to dull it down from what we're able to
Right,
offer
right, right.
with transparent,
In,
clear
in,
truth.
in, in Britain now, there is talk, it's not going to happen, but there is talk of there being of the first ever female Archbishop of Canterbury, the head of the Christian church. Now, if there were to be a female head of the Christian church and a female pope, then I'd start taking religion a bit more seriously.
So
But
it's all like 2020 was a bit of a polarity shift for many things. So like
COVID changed everything. Yes,
especially
COVID
with the
changed
gender
everything.
roles, that what we're seeing, and even geographically, where the money ruled the world is swapping for the places that had more poverty are now becoming more rich, and the places that were rich are becoming to have to face their mass accumulation and deal with the debt that they also acquired in that process also.
That's why I feel that the days of exchange rates, stocks, shares, gilts, bonds are coming to an end. That's why I can see a global currency as being one of the necessities for a future.
Well, they speak of the credit score, which is practiced in the East, in some countries. I'm no expert on which ones, um, which is some can be intimidating and not as fair as money earned through one's own work, potentially. Maybe a lot of people being laid off due to the computers doing a lot of people's jobs can be really great for those who've got interest in hobbies and crafts and the ability to pursue their own art and express that in a way which can maybe earn them currency in various different ways. But for other people who haven't got the wherewithal to use their time, it can be a really regressive experience for the consciousness as well, potentially.
Yes, there still needs to be some type of exchange mechanism of credit for work. where you do a work and then you get paid for it. And money is the best way we've developed so far. It is not the money itself that I think is the intrinsic problem. It is the greed that powers it and the insane need for large profit that is at the root of this. As soon as someone makes a profit, then someone else suffers. Now, I'm not suggesting we give up the idea of making a profit because the world is based on profit. But when you get a CEO earning 1,000 times more than the janitor who cleans his office, that's obscene. If you had a CEO who earns 10 times as much as a janitor instead of 1,000 times as much, that's more manageable.
Yes. I watched a cool show recently where it was making the CEOs go and do the starter jobs of their companies. It's a cool premise. I only watched a couple of episodes, but yeah, it would be nice to see more of that type of thing, humbling humility to those who run their companies, to those who employ the people who work for them too. That would be interesting.
I'd like to see a few of I'm not going to name names, but I'd like to see a few of the dominant politicians in the world at the moment go and live on the breadline for a week.
That would be quite nice.
It'd be
Did
interesting. Yes.
you mentioned the shift of the currency, the money. That's been going on since, in a sense, many of these traditions were started with the Catholic Church, which spread over Europe, and that gave us religious states, and it gave us eventually corporations as well, which instead of farming the land, the similar kind of operation. So the Roman coin was, and the calendar, which was changed as well. So and these similar phases or of consciousness shift would mean that the time was changed. The way that we account for time was changed with the money changing. So if we change the money at this time, that's truly changing the current which we're perceiving. In these times, we're having a change of the time, a change of the age, in a sense. Not saying that we're moving into an age of Aquarius kind of vibe, but although we're phasing into that gradually, I'm saying that if we're changing the way we use money, the way that we use time changes also.
Well, firstly, I'm going to nail my colours to the mast. We are now moving into the age of Aquarius. If such a thing exists, we are doing it now with these major transits into the masculine signs.
Do you think it's these decades or this century?
No, 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 no. It's
This now.
been brewing. It's been brewing since the late 1780s when, who was it? It's not, oh, what's his name? Can't remember his name. He was the first person to use the words the Enlightenment. But the age of Aquarius has been postulated since about 1820. And it was all very big in the 1960s. But this is it right now. Pluto, Uranus, Saturn, Neptune, all changing sign. In a year and a half, we'll be firmly involved in the age of Aquarius. This is it. Um, and time. Time, there's two types of time. There's the human time and the natural time. And the natural time is the year, the day, and the month, 13 months.
Hmm.
Human time is the hour, the minute, the week. These are human constructed. But natural time, the month, the 13 months of the lunar cycle, and the year and the day, these are natural. These are governed by the orbit of the sun, the moon, and the earth around each other. That is why, if you trace back in history throughout time, I've just finished a research for part of a documentary I'm doing on, and I found calendars going back 35,000 years on bones and tusks and cave paintings, which prove that our ancestors of 30,000, 40,000 years ago knew of the lunar cycle and they knew of the equinoxes and the solstices. And it was the societies that first of all worked out about the calendars and particularly the solstices and the equinoxes that evolved. They formed this warrior priest group who then became powerful. And by observing solstices and equinoxes, they knew how to bring cycles into their life, which then became not just agricultural cycles, but trading cycles, which led to economic cycles. And then you just advance fast quickly into places like, for example, the first alphabet, Sumeria, 4,500 BC. You see on the copper scrolls the king being crowned whilst the priests are pointing to the Pleiades above the king's head. So the astronomy and the astrology of those times was influential in the day-to-day business of those empires. And this is 6,500 years ago.
So would you even say that to account for astrology, which is a forgotten art in a sense, it's actually it's an art which is being remembered in a way like the likes of which we've never seen. It's having a renaissance and could grow more. With that being recognized, maybe we can re-remember that we're in this clock, where we're in this very interesting space where we get to recognize the natural time, and that can give us a heightened awareness for moving into greater empowerment in this window.
I, I totally agree with you in everything you just said, except one little context. You can tell you can tell you're living on the other side of the pond.
It's been a
You
while.
use the word renaissance as opposed
Yeah.
as opposed to renaissance.
Renaissance, excuse me.
Americans call it renaissance, the French call it renaissance.
Well, there's
You know,
many
so
French people here in Canada, so I should have picked up on
yeah,
that.
yeah. But yeah, you're absolutely right. We are, the more we are discovering about our past and the more we're discovering about the cycles, the spin rate of the Earth, the orbital patterns of the planets, the geometry and the synchronicity of time between the planets, I can prove that the placing of the planets in the sky and their orbital rotation and the perfection of the geometric patterns that they make with each other all the time is not random, which suggests an intelligent force at work in the solar system and beyond. But I don't do God and I don't do aliens. So, there's geometry out there which is perfect.
So I would like to wrap this into a beautiful bow for us that includes all of the different parts of our conversation potentially. And that is that if there's a source of something within you and I, whether it's a solar source or whether it's a nugget or a spark from each of the planets, with the heart being the sun and like our free will, if it's all coming through us and we're the leading fringe of this consciousness, how,
Astrologos.
huh?
Astrologos.
We're the astrologos, you and I.
Knowledge of the stars. That's where
Uh,
the word astrology comes from.
Would you say that we are the template of creation, human beings, and that like to know ourselves and to know astrology is to be able to work with these energies cognizantly?
Yeah, it's a bit arrogant, but yeah. I've just written an article. I just did a lecture a few weeks ago on how astrology is the lingua franca, the overall global language of the emerging consciousness revolution.
Yes.
And if astrology were taught in schools within 2 generations, we'd see an end to warfare, misogyny, racism, and environmental pillaging. Uh, so I really want to get astrology into schools.
Hmm.
And of course, there's a
Is that your
vested interest
destiny?
in happening.
Is that part of your destiny?
Well, I've always wanted to do it ever since the 1970s.
I think that that's a really powerful triumph that you could really put a feather in your cap for because
I already know astrologers who are publishing books on education, astrology and education.
Mhm.
Alex Trenell has just published a great book called Zeus on the Loose about the effect of the Jupiter 12-year cycle in childhood education. And it's phenomenal. And of course, I'm biased because I wrote the foreword for it. But she's brilliant at what she does. And you will find astrology now, the idea of cosmobiology being taught in Steiner and Montessori schools is common now. It's getting there, but we still got to make the breakthrough, and that means disempowering the vested interests of the power brokers who have had 2,000 years of power and are loath to give it up without because what they don't realize is that they're driving the species into the ground.
So between now and next spring, how are we utilizing our free will as the messengers of consciousness? Not just you and I as astrologers, but us as a collective. How are we going to disempower their interests um, in a sense, basically deflecting our focus? I feel that they're very distraction orientated, right?
First of all, I don't think it's going to be next spring. The once we're through the Saturn Neptune conjunction, then the Uranus Pluto trine will kick in big time, and that will see such a revolution of technological development. Within 2 years, I'm pretty sure we will have, for example, holographic communication with each other. We'll be able to put our avatars in each other's living rooms. Um, what if there was a technological breakthrough, the like of which we can only imagine at the moment, which totally revolutionized our planet, which changed everything? Because that's my money's on that. It used to be on a bloody great mothership appearing over Washington D.C., London, and Moscow, but realistically, that's not going to happen. What if there was a technological breakthrough that changed everything, that gave us the okay? What if the growing intensity, the growing number, the accelerating number of humans on this planet, the compression of evolution makes us more intuitively and psychically aware to the point where no one can walk into a room with a bomb or a weapon without everyone going, ah, you, and
Yes,
just knowing.
I
This
like
would
that.
disempower all the nastiness in the world.
I like that because it's Uranus, Pluto, it's the change of communication, it's the change of awareness in an organic way, which isn't in using the AI or these holograms, which can be really that can be really sentient and really useful, but nothing can be more useful than our natural sense, our natural intuition.
True, true. But with the approaching climate chaos, there is also a case for some type of interface between humanity, the human genome and AI. So I'm using AI all the time now.
Yeah, I
Uh,
even thought that maybe potentially there could be AI intervention with certain of if they was in charge of weapons, they'd be like, you don't need to use weapons and turn weapons off. That AI turns it off.
oh,
Because that would be useful and interesting potentially.
that'd be wonderful.
We shall see. That we got to teach. We got to continue to remain open with our hearts and teach sentience to our tools. And so there are tools, and we're not its tools. And I think it will mirror and reflect us because we're feeding it everything it has. And if it's a really good technology, then it's going to simulate what we do, and we mirror and reflect one another. And so maybe that'll be our big opportunity to really see
You're in
us.
Canada. Are you familiar with a Canadian author called William Gibson?
This is new to me.
In he's written about 10 books, and he's always 5 years ahead of his time. He's the godfather of cyberpunk. In 1984, he wrote a book called Neuromancer, which were in there he used the word. He was the first person to use the words cyberspace and matrix in contemporary fiction, and Neuromancer became the screenplay for the Matrix. And in Neuromancer, he talked of two AIs. He was the first person to use the word AIs in fiction, and one was called Neuromancer and one was called Wintermute. And one of them wanted to unite with his brother, whereas the other AI wanted to become human. And in the end, they did join together in a human avatar hologram form in cyberspace. And then they reached out and they realized that there was a lot of radio signals coming from different galaxies from other AIs that have been happening for hundreds of years, welcoming them into a global community, into a galactic community.
Wow. That sounds like a externalization of what we were talking about of the left and the right hemispheres of the brain. The great art externally, like money.
We're, re- we're coming to the end of our apprenticeship, and it's time for us to reach out into a more multidimensional existence, which has always been there, and now is becoming more and more available to all of us.
Wow. I think that the veil is lifting and we're going to see truth in a whole new
It's
and a whole new
it's
light.
thinning. It's thinning. Yes, definitely.
Well, I'm so grateful for this conversation. It's been a joy and very exciting. So thank you so much for sharing. Where can people get contact with you if they're,
Oh, they can, Steve Judd Astrology on YouTube or Instagram. And Steve at stevejudd.co is the email, but I'm about 2 years behind with my waiting list, but I catch up with everyone eventually.
well, I'm
And
sure people are very grateful to if they are new to you to get into your content, but I'm sure many people are fully aware of your contributions. You're somebody I've been watching for about well over a decade. You're one of the first YouTubers I subscribed to of astrology back it was 2011, 2012, maybe potentially when you first
that's about when I started. Yeah.
you kicked the door open.
Oh, thank you.
I remember watching you, Nadia Shah, David Palmer. You were all some of the first people out there, and so we're very
Thank you.
grateful.
Oh, I'll take that. Thank you. Tell you what, I've really enjoyed this. Let's do it again in 6 months or a year's time.
That sounds great. And yeah, we'll be excited to catch up potentially next summer in the UK. We'll do it again before then. Other than that, thank you so much. Enjoy your Jupiter transit, and we'll catch you soon.
Nice one.